Call the select board meeting of January, so June 17th, to order at 5:35. The first item of business are the select board minutes. I would entertain a motion to accept the January 3rd executive session and the January 3rd general minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the January 3rd executive meeting minutes and regular meeting minutes as written.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Clyde. Any discussion?
Very good. Cheyenne, just in the future, when we, under manager's update, it took me a while to figure out what CLA and COD.
Oh, yes.
I was wondering if that should be spelled out.
All set? Okay, Clyde?
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes passed, thank you. Going on to the warrants, or also known as the accounts payable through today. We have a motion to accept them.
I'll make that motion that we approve the order/warrants through January 17th.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion?
Maybe just give Dave 30 seconds to explain for the record the payment to Green Mountain and the it's refundable.
Yeah, so there is a payment, basically a prepayment to Green Mountain Power for $85,000 to do all the work that they need to do for the project. Does not include the items that we need to do, such as laying the conduit and stuff like that, but everything that is Dave responsible for. That needs to go in just to ensure that everything is in place and they can bring in the materials and everything that they need to do. If for whatever reason things don't go as planned, then they will send that back.
Okay. Jim, is this correct? You attended auditor's training?
I did. Is that part of it? Oh, it's in the, all right, yes, I did.
Okay.
How was that?
That was exciting.
Thank you.
Was it useful?
Yes, it was all.
VLCT?
Yeah.
Dave, this is a little off topic, but when the first responders respond from either Woodstock or Hartford, do we get any sort of detailed breakdown of that? I know we have the bill, but we don't.
Not usually, as far as all the responses that they make throughout the course of the year, not generally.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? All in favor of accepting the minutes through January 17th, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments?
Maybe. But I don't have my notes handy. I think, well, let me hold off.
Okay,
You know,
let's move on to public comments then. This evening, my sense is that there's a few people here to talk about the intersection. I don't know how many people will be online. It's a pretty nasty weather night right now. One of the things that I would ask is that if you have spoken before, if you feel you have new information you would like to share, please share it. But if you're just repeating something, we have it on record on that part. Mary asked to start the public comment period, so I'll prefer.
And I also want to say something that Phil usually says and forgot to say tonight, and that he asked for everybody to continue to be civil and to remind everybody that we are neighbors, and democracy moves forward in the best possible way when we are civil to each other. So my only comment, I guess, would be that last meeting was, in my opinion, riddled with misperceptions, misunderstandings, misremembering of the facts, because they've gone on, this whole thing has gone on for a long time, and I understand that. The listserv, I would say, has been brutal for us who are the targets. To characterize us as cowardly for not seconding a motion was misunderstanding the process. I think we're here, whether we like it or not, to defend the residents' vote. And everybody voted a certain way. We are not here to overturn it, okay? I am not for this intersection now, but I will not overturn my neighbor's vote, right? So, as you can see, I feel very strongly about that, and that's why I've been on this board, and it's about democracy, which is not well served by these misleading comments and insults. So I appreciate people's positive comments, whether they agree with me or not, and I expect that we will continue, I hope, in a positive way. So thanks for coming tonight.
Just I'll point out something which I have said at a couple of meetings is we four are fairly new to the project. The project was underway before we came on the board. The bond vote, I was a member of the board, but Mary has been there since the very beginning. So historically speaking, she's the one to answer a few questions. So,
However, I have a poor memory, so.
is that the same as a selective?
Yeah, select board memory. So that's why I say all of us need to look back at the minutes and why meeting minutes are very important. Thank you.
Okay, would someone like to open public comments?
I just wanted to come to see if there was anything different, you know, like if anybody was gonna decide to not have it or something. I just wanted to see how big the crowd was and.
Can you come forward? I'm sorry, because that's just well, yeah.
That's how you
Oh.
I can say your name.
Oh.
Oh, no, you gotta go right to the table.
Oh, I gotta come more often, so I know the procedures. No, I'm here, just to.
And your name?
I'm Nina Hickson.
I know who you are, but I need to.
And I know most of you. And I'm just here to see if there was any changes, if anybody wanted to not have it anymore or whatever.
The short answer is no.
No,
So-
what was the question?
You asked, or were there any changes?
Oh, okay, no, thank you. Okay, I didn't know. Okay, thanks.
No. Okay. Thank you, Nina.
Can I make, there, I'm just looking at the attendance online, there's quite a few people that it's just their first name. So I just want to know if people online could put it first and last.
Okay.
Do you want to ask them?
I,
Can you see who they are?
this may take a little bit, but, so, Bob and Di Bibby is Bob Bibby. We have a Cassie. We need a last name from Cassie. We also have Karen. We need a last name from Karen. The dreaded Karen. We have Linda. We need a last name from Melinda, would be greatly appreciated.
Charlie, are any of those raising their hand, or can you unmute them?
No, I don't know if anyone's raising their hand right now.
Okay, let's proceed, and should they have comments, we'll get a name at that time.
Sarah, unless you want to take somebody in here, there's a couple people online that have their hand up.
Are they new?
Sarah Bruce didn't speak last week, I don't think. Kim Wasserman, Miles Muslin, those three.
Well, let's call on Sarah if she's available.
Yep. Charlie, can we get Sarah Bruce?
Yep.
Thank you. Well, this happened last time, she disappeared. Sarah, you just need to unmute on your end. There you go, you're all set.
Hear me? Thank you. Sent an email to the select board members last night. And I would like to read that email to make it public, not via the listserv, but in this venue. And in case I know the select board's inboxes are quite full, and I want to make sure that they saw this, but mostly to make it public. I would like to reiterate Ione Minot's comment at the last select board meeting that the intersection vote in 2020 was not whether or not to redesign the intersection for increased safety. It was clearly and very emphatically stated, if my memory is correct by Gordon Richardson, that the intersection project would proceed regardless of the outcome of the 2020 vote, based on earlier town meeting vote of only a few percent of the residents, possibly as few as 2 or 3% of the residents. The 2020 vote was only whether or not to bury the lines, the utility lines, an addition that increased the cost from about $500,000 to $1.5 million at the time, and to take out a bond to cover this cost. And I think you can see that by reading the article at that vote. The comment is, if there is a safety problem with near misses, if not fatalities, in the intersection, it's a problem with human behavior. Speeding, paying insufficient attention, and ignoring stop signs. I don't know that redoing the intersection is likely to alter human behavior that much. One or more well-placed, flashing, "your speed is" signs, last cost estimate I heard was $7,000 per sign, would probably be far more effective at a lower cost. I know the counter argument that Hartland can't do that because Route 5 and Route 12 are state roads. But now we're talking about going to spend possibly more, a little bit more, maybe over $2 million, to the detriment of other things we need to do in Hartland, to redo a section of those two state roads. Why can't Hartland work with the state to place such signs? That should have been at least tried a few years ago when this suggestion was first proposed and was dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Is Miles available, Charlie?
Miles?
Okay.
He's not yet. Kim Wasserman is next up. Charlie, if you could take care of Kim. Kim, you just need to unmute on your end.
Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Hold on. Okay, can you still hear me?
Better, yes, thank you.
Okay, we had to get rid of, we're here on two different platforms.
Tell me my last name.
Sure, I can give you Karen's last name as well. It's Fellows, Fellows. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. As somebody who moved here pre-pandemic in 2019, we did not have, or we were not involved with the initial project and the involvement with the select board. We feel that we've signed on to an intersection that is in our minds and view, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. We are wasting quite a bit of money to reconfigure and work on an intersection that doesn't seem to have a pedestrian problem, that doesn't seem to have a traffic problem. It's just a matter of, there are several stop signs that people do not seem to be observing, which I have not seen. I think that the project is a waste of money. And if I had been here when the original vote went through, I never would have approved this. It seems that we have plenty of roads that could be used, that the money could be used for to work on Hartland, rather than reconfiguring the heart of our town and inconveniencing everyone that takes that road to get through to another section of Vermont. Okay. I really don't have much else to say other than I really do not want my real estate taxes to reflect an intersection that I think is useless. It works fine the way it is. I've never seen a car accident there. I've never seen a pedestrian issue there. Never had a problem crossing the streets there. You could make the markings on the street better. You could put additional signage in for a much cheaper price than $1.5 to $2 million. And I don't see any purpose in burying the lines when the town looks fine the way it is. That's all I have. I don't have anything prepared, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Chuck, do you want to go next?
Chuck Fenton. So I'm hoping to provide some new information this time around, at least new to me. First of all, I wanted to address this issue of democracy from hopefully a little different perspective. The miracle of democracy, as I understand it, is that it's evolutionary. It allows us as citizens and free people to evolve as we develop greater understanding. And I'll point out for those of you, especially in the room who are women, just a little over 100 years ago, women were not allowed to vote. And yet, through democracy, we were able to make that much progress. And I won't go into other examples. There's many of them. There's many of them. It seems that a lot of the responses that have been mentioned, for example, in the listserv, have to do with sentiment and conjecture primarily. So really what I would like to promote is that we take a step back, just as we're doing with the rec center, with Damon Hall, and with the Queechee Road, and study where this is going and where it's come from. And have more of an understanding based on data of what we're proposing to spend our resources on. I went back into the scoping study, which was done back in 2012 by RSG Associates. And at that time, there was a meeting of 30 people, 30 citizens, who gathered in a focus group to discuss possible options. There were several options presented by RSG for changing the intersection. That 30 people broke out into focus groups. One focus group dealt with the four-way intersection design. And out of that focus group, four people recommended the four-way intersection. 2 people in that focus group demurred, and we don't know if there was anyone else, according to the record, that had any opinion whatsoever. But what it looks like is that 4 people started this entire path that we're on of changing the intersection from what it is now to a 4-way, directly opposed intersection. There was no data in the scoping study that looked at the various issues that we talked about. It did say, though, that the reason for doing it was to enhance the safety and mobility for motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists at the primary arrival point into town. The only data that I've been able to find, historical data, that addresses the safety and mobility for motorists are 3 incidents that took place from 2007 to 2018. 3 automobile interactions one was a rear ender, and 2 were broadsides. That's an amazing piece of historical data for any intersection. Only 3 incidents involving property damage. There was no personal injuries that took place. In the scoping study, there was no history of pedestrian or bicycle injuries at all. In fact, it wasn't even further addressed in the scoping study, the issue of bicycle and pedestrian safety. So it's unclear how the 4-way crosswalks have evolved in the entire study. It's unclear to me that there was any engineering that specifically addressed these points. We've spent a lot of resources on engineering for laying out and designing the construction aspects and getting permits for the intersection. But to me, it seems like there's been very little historical study of why it's really needed based on the history data or data that comes from other similar examples. So as an example, a 4-way intersection, if you were to look at the history of other 4-way intersections, you would find that they're about the most dangerous form of vehicle interaction that exists. There's a very high number of broadside incidents in 4-way aligned intersections. Now, we only have 2 in the last 15 years, and why is that? We could speculate about it because it hasn't been studied, although I personally feel it's because our intersection is offset. The principal source of a broadside would be someone coming down Queechee Road, someone coming in from Woodstock, and they would interact in a T-bone.
Chuck, could I ask you about how much longer do you expect to talk?
2 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
So I think there is evidence based on other intersections that we could do worse, and that's my point, that we could potentially do worse than what we now have. The bottom line for me is I think it's time for us to slow down and to study where we're going and to get, because if we go ahead and build something that has poorer outcomes, worse outcomes than what we now have, that will make a lot of us very uncomfortable, and we will have spent so much of our resources that it will be very, very difficult to go back or to make a change at that point. So what I'm encouraging, what I'm asking is that we consider slowing down and doing a study just as we're doing at the rec center, at this building, and on Queechee Road, a study to guide us based on data, guide us into the future and not just on sentiment and conjecture. Thank you.
Am I allowed to ask for a point of clarification?
Oh, can I? Wait, I have a lot of hands up. Rob, what's your?
Am I allowed to ask Chuck for a point of clarification?
Not really during public comments, so you could help me with that.
It's not gonna devolve to some kind of, arguing back and forth. Then
Rob, let's try it. Go ahead and ask the question.
So, and I appreciate that. Sorry. I'm on the hot seat. So, Chuck brings up a point about that there's been 3 incidents at this intersection. And my question would be, at other intersections with like traffic that are 4-way, for instance, 4 corners, how many instances have we had at that intersection as a comparison? I know he's asking for a full-blown study, but is there any kind of data available for, say, 4 corners that we could do a comparison? At this point in time? That was the point. The question I was.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Dana Jacobson Goodhue. I feel like I am here to provide a little bit of history. Mr. Fenton spoke to the possible history of what brought this about, and I will say that it was me. When we moved here in 2010 with our young children then, my husband and I, we live on this side of town, sort of on the Sumner Mansion side of town, if you will. And we were walking to the library. And somebody who was coming up Route 5 South did not stop at the stop sign. And we were crossing the road in the crosswalk that's between Mike's and the library to take the kids to the library on a Saturday. And my daughter, who was 6, was in front of me. I was holding the hand of my 4-year-old, and she has poor vision, so she's a good girl and listens. And I said, I screamed, stop, or freeze, and she froze. And had that not happened, my daughter would not be here today, because someone blew through the stop sign. I am not committed to 4-way stop. I'm not committed to anything, but I did start a petition that same week to have a conversation about making the intersection safe for pedestrians, not about cars. I think in 2023, we should be speaking about making a town that is safer for children, adults, older people, as well as for our environment. We need a town that we can walk and that we can bike, and a town where the children go to school on the opposite side of 2 state highways. To get to the library or the rec center, they have to cross the road. There is one crosswalk, and that crosswalk is not well maintained. There's not terrific signs. There are lots of things that could be done, like the Wheelock signage for people who are in Hanover, if you're familiar with the crosswalk that lights up. There are so many things that could be done, but I would ask in this moment that we not lose track of children and pedestrians, which is what this was begun by, and not about car accidents, and about making a town that is accessible in ways other than vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other folks? Rob?
Yeah. Thanks for listening. So,
Could you introduce yourself? Twice you sat there and haven't.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rob Sangster. I agree with, the prelude that Mary brought in, that this is has been a democratic process in voting for this and then voting for the burial of the electric and utility lines, and I appreciate that. But over time, the price of this has increased dramatically, and at no point in time was there, as far as I understand, and I could be wrong, a statute of limitations, if you will, on how long till this project would be kicked off and completed. So just by inflation, we kind of built ourselves a problem with that, and now, years later, we're running into, a budget that is going to impede or take from our town budget. So my question on this is, instead of looking back and having the discussions on how we got here, is can we look forward? And is there a vehicle to say, look, because of the price increase, should this come back to the people for a vote? Personally, I think if it's over 10%, which doesn't sound like, a big deal until you realize that you're talking $150,000 at 10%, then at what point in time do you bring it back to the people for a revote and a revisit to see if it's the value that they still think it should be going forward? And so I would ask, and I don't know if there's a way to get an answer to this tonight, how would we get this back to a petition, or to get it back on a vote to the people, now that we know how much, we know at a minimum what the increase is going to be, and it could be substantially more with change orders through the project. So that's my concern. How do we look forward to making sure that this gets done, A, in a timely manner and within a budget that the people are still willing to accept?
Okay, thank you, Rob.
Is there any?
No.
This is just public comment, so
You
you
got-
count.
Okay.
You got Miles Muslin and Dave Dukeshire on the line.
Let's try Miles, if he's available.
Hi, Phil and David. Thank you very much. I just have a question about the buried line, please. And that is, how much of the line will be buried?
From north of the intersection going towards Hartford on Route 5, there is a line
Well, is it
between,
gonna be like 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 200 feet, something like that, Dave? Do you know?
I don't have the linear feet on me. I can give
The
you.
only reason I ask is to spend $500,000 for just a few hundred feet of buried line and then it goes right back up seems silly.
Anything more, Miles?
No, that's all. Just a comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there someone in the room who'd like to, Rachel?
Hi, my name's Rachel Auburn. I live in Hartland. And I just wanted to make 2 points here. The first is that there's been a very vocal contingent on the listserv commenting, for the most part, negatively about this. And I just want to make the point that the fact that an equally large contingent hasn't commented in favor of the current plan doesn't mean that it isn't out there. It just means maybe we're not the kind of people that shout on the listserv about this particular issue. I'm in favor of the current plan. I think it's been well thought out. It's certainly been voted on by the town with a majority approving it. And personally speaking, as a driver, I can see why that intersection, this intersection out here needs work. It's illogical in some ways, which is probably one of the reasons for some of the lack of adherence to the stop signs. And I have also seen people disregarding the stop signs. And I think just because there haven't been any fatalities yet, doesn't mean that one of those vehicular accidents that Chuck mentions, or those near misses that other people have mentioned, couldn't, in a millisecond lead to a fatality, and we don't want to wait for that to happen. And I also think that, personally speaking, that there is something to be said for improving the aesthetics of the entryway to our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Can we go to Dave? Maybe?
Dave, Dave Dukeshire.
Dave has an older version of Zoom, so it's not allowing him to speak.
Okay. Dave, we're not able to connect with you. Charlie, how about Cassie?
Okay.
Just to say her last name.
Hello?
Hi,
Hello?
Cassie, we can
Hi,
hear you.
This is Cassie George.
Thank you, Cassie.
Okay, you can hear that. I
Yes.
just want to confirm my name, and I also am not sure why we can't have another vote on this.
Do you want to add anything else, Cassie?
No, I just don't understand why there can't be another vote.
Okay. When we're finished, we'll try to.
I can, there's a couple things I can maybe kind of round up here.
Cassie, we'll hold that for now. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Why? It's just comments, they're not, I see comments, they're not answering.
Okay.
No.
Ariel?
Ariel Arman. I agree with
statement that the voters did vote for something, and the fact that the funds now are quite a bit more. So the question that I have is, does the select board need to authorize the spending of those additional funds? It could be, I mean, currently 434, 560, it could be beyond that. Coming from the highway surplus fund, it might come from other funds. Is that something that the select board needs to authorize, or does the town manager have license to spend such monies? I don't know how the town works, so that's just a general question. What I do understand, I don't know if it's true, but to respond to some of the comments, like the one that was just made, I think, or I've been told that when it comes to borrowing money, the voters need to vote to borrow money, but to approve our yearly budget or to approve spending from funds of monies that the town already has in funds, the voters don't need to vote. And that's, I think, why this, when people ask about a vote, it's not considered. I don't know if I'm correct in that, but I think that's what I've learned. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, let's try to answer one or two questions, and then we've got a lot to do tonight with the regular agenda. Dave, you want to address what funds we're talking about here, and where should the project come out to be? Well, two questions. How did we currently come up with the number that we've been using? And then second, let's talk about the highway surplus.
So presently, the numbers that we're talking about is an estimate, it's an engineering estimate on, as is, it's prudent to do an estimate, have an idea as to what to expect, and to analyze whatever the RFPs are that come in. So it's kind of forward-looking and to be used as an RFP tool as to where these contractors may stand.
Right.
As far as the surplus monies go, they are highway fund surplus monies. They can be used for roads, including work to be done on Route 5 or 12. So we do not need to go back to the voters to use that surplus money. It's in the select board purview to do that. If there was any kind of necessary work, obviously any warrant goes in front of the select board, but there was an agreement between the town manager and the select board as to what work needed to be done. We could proceed on that. I'll just kind of add to that and go back to an original comment. So a vote was done for borrowing. It wasn't on the project itself. It was to borrow $1,062,000. So if we were to borrow for this project, that would go to a town vote. I think that perhaps it might be prudent to look at this is that we don't need to borrow, and there won't be interest, but the fact that the surplus funds are being used, that is within the surplus, within the purview of the select board.
Okay.
Well, just an observation and a suggestion. So, collectively, there's been a lot of input, whether it be by email or listserv or public comments. It seems like several suggestions have been made, as simple as doing the project as is, stopping the project, doing a study, having a vote, and I think also reducing scope to meet the budget, right? All great suggestions, all have pros and cons. So I think, we can't spend a lot more time on this tonight because we do have other things that we have to get to from a time perspective. And we also have an agenda next week, a special meeting to get the things that we haven't been able to get to. So I'd like to make a motion that we add an agenda item to our first February select board meeting, just to review the options that are on the table, right? Talk about the pros and cons, right? Just so that we collectively have a good feel for them. You know, and that's kind of our homework, the way I see it, leading into the RFP delivery when we actually have to deliberate and take an action.
Right. Okay. I'm not sure about protocol. I'd like to make a comment before we ask for a second. I'm reading notes that I wrote Sunday. You know, I'm not going to bore you with everything I wrote, but we have a. Well, let me just read this. The project has started. After months of additional property easements, those were required when the poles were going to be moved. Negotiations with the power and media companies, revisions to the sidewalk plans, the final engineering and final state approvals, the project has entered the request for proposal phase. Those requests are out. And I don't have the date off the top of my head, the end of February sometime.
February 10th?
February 10th, that's not too much. I'm wondering, before we have a discussion of any of those options, which I agree with you, you know, could all be viable, I think we should wait for the RFPs to be back.
That's certainly the path we could take. I think we could do it with the RFP. I mean, there is that big missing piece of data in terms of what's the final price, right? But I think we could at least ground ourselves on what the pros and cons of each solution is, because there are some that we may need to cross off.
Yeah.
Because they're just not practical.
Right. So, okay. So would you would not want to modify the motion to wait till after that, February 10th? The way it's going to shake out, it could be.
We could wait.
Okay.
My personality, you can ask Cheyenne, right, is if there's a path to get some of the work done now, let's do it and not put it off and then be in another time crunch. The further we delay, you know, the less options we have.
You're a professional in the systems world, and you are very aware that in the systems world, when you're doing projects, there's an equilateral triangle. If you add to the scope, you create the duration, you increase the duration, and you increase the cost. It's not necessarily a given if you shrink one side of those triangles that it's going to sort of like save the cost and so on. My only point, Jim, is I before we engage engineers and ourselves, and you know, there may be some cost here, so let's actually understand fully what we're up against. If that's acceptable.
I can live with that. I just want to move the ball forward, collectively, collaboratively.
Yeah.
So what's your motion?
The motion was basically to take our first February meeting and have a warned agenda item so people know that we're discussing this topic, which I think we've kind of not had for the last two meetings, and talk about the possible options.
Well, we haven't been discussing it.
Right.
It's been open for public comment. Right. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so talk about what the possible options could be and what the pros and cons of each of those are.
So why not wait until after we look at the RFPs?
Yeah, you can. Like I said, my personality is such that I want to drive the ball forward.
Okay, so would you make your motion then for the, what would it be, the
20th?
It's the 20th? Okay.
We have meetings on the 6th and the 20th.
Yeah, so the caution I would throw when I look at David, RFPs are due on the 10th. my guess is, Two Rivers has some work to do when they come in to evaluate. You may have some work to do. My guess, and this is only a guess, is that if we don't do it the first meeting of February, that a new select board will be doing this in March.
I feel like we're acting on.
So I think the
spinning a wheel.
discussion that your suggestion
Yeah.
probably isn't until after town meeting.
Okay.
So, but I'm happy to, accept it, withdraw the motion, accept another motion to do it differently.
Why not do it on the 20th?
I don't think if you're
Oh,
asking.
you don't think these will be
I
done
don't
yet?
think the data is gonna be there. I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect that there's gonna be work to do to evaluate those RFPs.
Yeah, there are three
We're not gonna
players.
get the data on the 11th, right?
No, but how about on the 20th?
Don't know, so.
When are
that's
they
why-
due back to us?
Yeah.
They're due to us,
On the 10th.
so we would
No.
at least have the numbers at the 10th. So for the 20th, we would have the numbers.
You would have numbers, it just needs to be,
They might not
they
be
just need to be,
precise, but.
whatever the lowest bidder will be,
The engineering firm and Two Rivers will go through it to make sure that the various aspects
Yeah.
meet the state standards and so on, and that the proposals are complete on that part.
that the numbers and quality, or quantities match and all that good stuff.
Right, then I'll amend my motion to be the second meeting in February.
Okay,
Okay.
I would second it.
okay. All in favor of the motion to have agenda item on the meeting of February 20th to discuss project options, say aye.
Aye.
I think we didn't add it.
Aye, sorry.
Okay.
I would like to make one additional motion for your consideration. It's separate, but the information might help us. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to add an agenda item to our first meeting in February to discuss the capital project program and what comes from Dave's slide that went up during the budget time. And then to try to think about next steps to flush out what's on that list and what the funding sources might be.
How about for the new board?
Well,
That might be a
I
discussion.
think Jim just recognized that we don't have one that we looked at during the budget cycle. So I'm not quite sure what you're proposing a new one?
I'm proposing that we kind of flush it out with more detail in terms of project priority, timing, potential funding sources, which are the types of things the VLCT would recommend, or actually Two Rivers would recommend for a capital program. And this does not have to be a big project for the select board. What I'm proposing is just a discussion, right? Now, the work could be, divvied out to a subcommittee, maybe a select board member or two. Dave would have to be part of that.
Right. Yeah. We are talking about a style difference here. So I'll just sort of ask if there's a second, or Mary did have an interesting observation to wait till the new board or someplace.
And you don't want to wait till then because,
Honestly, I don't think it's a lot of work. I think it's just taking the work that David's already done and putting some more meat on the bones. But, the 90% of the knowledge is gonna be in his head.
I think we're pretty well booked up for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jim, you're,
All right.
three of you are coming into the
Then,
year end.
Then I'll amend the motion.
Okay.
I'll amend the motion to say, I make a motion to add an agenda item to a future select board meeting to discuss the capital project program and take action to build out the program, projects, priorities, and funding sources.
wow, that's quite a motion. I would like to second that.
Okay. All in favor, any discussion, I'm sorry. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes. Okay, thank you. Let's go on to new business, and we have with us this evening Sheriff-elect Ryan Palmer, who would like to talk to us about some ideas for safety in the town of Hartland.
Thank you, Phil, for having me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ryan Palmer. I'm the sheriff-elect now of Windsor County. I'll take office here in about 2 weeks, February 1st, taking over the Windsor County Sheriff's Department. So big reason for coming tonight, I guess I'll sit down, it's kind of hard, was that I'm looking to expand the scope of the Sheriff's Department and to provide more regionalized police services across the county, especially to our smaller rural towns that don't have their own law enforcement services or contract, in your case with state police. I think that, you know, historically the Sheriff's Department in Windsor County has been very focused on traffic enforcement, and basically you hire us for 4 hours and we'll write you tickets that cover the cost of our contract. The whole point of my campaign was shifting away from that model, which I call kind of policing for profit, where you were essentially hired to generate revenue, and shifting to that of more of a community-oriented law enforcement agency that focuses on problem solving within the community, whether that's an intersection where somebody almost gets run over because there's very little enforcement. You know, we're talking a lot about the intersection here and stop signs and the different things that go on, but if there's no enforcement action, you know, a stop sign's kind of meaningless, as we've seen, to where, I mean, somebody was almost run over and potentially killed. So what you've contracted historically with the Vermont State Police for many, many years. Through different scenarios throughout the last few years, Vermont State Police are very short-staffed. They're culturally, I think, shifting kind of away from the idea of being small-town law enforcement, and they're just not able to provide that service as we've seen over the last couple of years. I think probably in the last, this contract, I think you'll see that very few extra additional hours have been provided to the town of Hartland. So for me, it's coming here and having a discussion about potentially switching to the Sheriff's Department to provide their law enforcement services. And I can touch base. I think everybody was inundated with my campaign stuff, but if you'd like me to touch base of kind of my philosophies on law enforcement, where we're looking to go, the direction the department's headed, or any other questions, I mean, I'm open to whatever you want and how you guys want to direct the conversation, but I just wanted to kind of at least start the conversation since we're in budget season now.
Sure. Ryan, you're arriving at a very interesting juncture. Dave Singer, Dave Ormiston, and myself met with Colonel Birmingham,
yes,
who's the head of the state police, a couple of falls ago, and the writing was on the wall at that point. He was receiving pressure from the Vermont legislature for them to become specialists and doing less policing in rural areas. What we as a board and as a community need to do is to answer the question of what does safety mean to Hartland? We've had some events in town, you know, there's no question about it that there's drug transactions going down. We have property disputes that often, you know, kind of get nasty. But until we as a community really know what we want and try to hammer that out, we won't know. I would like to continue a discussion with you because if we've mentioned it before, the state police, you know, we have, they're not able, much just like Ryan said, to meet their contract here in town. So they just not have the hours to show up. The state police, if I'm correct, this is they're already overtime, and they're so busy that there is nobody wants to work the overtime to sort of do that.
Can I just touch on how the contract, kind of explain how that contract works for them?
Yeah.
So Hartland contracts with Vermont State Police. It's what's called an overtime detail where the troopers that want to sign up for it. But what's happening is, one, they're at roughly 50% manning. I think that kind of fluctuates a little bit, but half of what they should be. So overtime is already so great. People are working so many hours. With the extra Hartland patrols, no one's signing up for them because they've already had their fill of overtime. And Hartland's always been, pro having state policing, but it's always been an overtime detail. And kind of what I'm suggesting is that we become your small town police department, and not just guys and girls here that are working in overtime detail to make a little extra money, but actually devoted to providing law enforcement service to the town of Hartland. Now, I'm not talking about over-policing. I don't want to see everybody get stopped, 100 car stops a day here on the Main Street, but I think being a little bit of a community problem solver and stepping in there, and I think, I dug into it a little bit. I think they provided like maybe 1 hour of service for you last month, and I mean, Dave would have to correct me on that, but you're just not getting any service now.
Yeah, we know it's minimal. Yeah. Brian, something to think about when you come back and we have more discussions. I would be looking to hear if the model you're suggesting is actually been implemented in other sheriff districts. I'm not sure what at the county levels. So that's something you can do to be thinking about it, to say how things fit.
I have a couple questions.
Okay, can I just touch on that real quick though? So yes, Lamoille County provides law enforcement service for a good chunk of the county up there. Mine's a slight, tweak to that, but I think it's essentially what state police has done before, where we're going to have cars in geographical areas where, for essentially basically what you're paying now, you'll have at least 12 to 16 hours of calls for service answered a day, if not more, and then, guarantee you roughly 16 to 24 hours of patrol in the town of Hartland a week. And be able to, generally our point of contact would be the town manager, but really deal with things like if you are getting complaints about, hey, this intersection, hey, I almost got run over. Well, let's be strategic about how we apply our resources. We have a lot of governor's highway safety type grants where if, hey, this intersection is a big deal, I'll stick a guy on there on grant money that doesn't even cost you anything and go, hey, write stop sign tickets, stop cars that are, and because the whole idea for me on the tickets is to modify behavior, right? At the end of the day, I don't want to ever arrest anybody again in my life or write another ticket because I hope there's no crime and nobody's speeding and driving, right? So yes, the model has worked, and I think as we're pushing this forward, it's going to work great. And I'd even think about, maybe do a little bit of a trial run and see if you like the service that we're providing with us before we push forward.
Okay, Mandy?
So one question I have is, would you be considered a 24-hour service, or would your sheriffs end up being dispatched on an on-call after a certain time of night like VSP does?
Yeah, I think at this point, the goal is to get to where we're a 24-hour agency. I think it would make more sense financially for both parties that, some of the after-hours calls state police takes, but looking at the numbers, calls for service and stuff, I think we'll be able to take over about 80% of their calls for service.
So if I'm hearing it, so after a certain time, we would end up going on call to state police, is that what?
Correct,
Okay.
which is essentially, there's no change there now, but in the next year or two, I would like to get to over 24 hours, but I think we can cover roughly 80% of your calls for service, 7 days a week.
Jim?
Okay, so the first question is just around the funding, which I think you've answered. It's not state funding or county funding, it's our funding.
Yeah, I'm asking for you to allocate about 70 grand to it.
Okay, the second question is around staffing. If state police can't fill their roles, how are you gonna be able to fill your roles to take on this added service?
I've got people who want to work for me. I mean, some of it is coming in and I'm a little younger, it's kind of exciting. What I'm trying to do is a little bit different than the norm. And it's generated some buzz and people want to come work for me. It's the short answer. I'm not worried about staffing. I interviewed 9 people a couple weeks ago. So I've got people in the pipeline. I've got good people, I think, some that can step in immediately, and then others that I plan on sending quite a few to the part-time school to start in March. But they're now called level 3 certified folks on staff. And there's a variety of training experience. My plan is to be one of the best trained departments in the state. Being on training, I think that solves a lot of the problems that we've seen in the country over the years. And I'm looking to make some pretty significant investments into our infrastructure through equipment, training, those type of things.
And the third question is logistics, which piggybacks on Mandy's question. How do you coordinate between state police, Windsor, yourselves on 911 calls? How's that process?
It's all back end. Mandy probably can explain it better, but it's not really anything that you would have to worry about. A 911 call, for instance, may go to Hartford, may go to Westminster. Sometimes it goes to New Hampshire, but those systems are all in place. Or, Mandy was working and say, "Oh, you're in Hartland. Okay, I know that either I dispatch the sheriffs or at this time I dispatch state police."
It comes up on the,
Yeah,
it comes up on the 911 screen, so literally when the address comes up, it will say who to dispatch and which dispatching agencies would dispatch for them. So if it's, for example, Windsor County, I don't know who dispatches.
We use Ludlow now, but I'm in the process of upgrading, changing to a different agency and kind of upgrading that service, but for an end user, you wouldn't have to.
First responder calls too.
You're correct. Any police, fire, EMS, when they come in, it will, the 911 call taker, it will come up on their screen and it says who dispatches for the responding agency, and then you call them. If it's after hours, that should say it on there as well.
Sounds like you got a better system than the FAA.
Spoken like a true systems guy.
But
You know
also-
old software when you know it.
But I'm off, my plan involves dealing with your, criminal complaints, putting some stuff, criminal investigations, just the general calls for service, right? And I think, like I said, we can staff at least 2 full shifts with that, but also some of the village ordinance type things that, end up probably on his desk. Hey, my neighbor's dog is running loose. Those are some of the things that, Manny can tell you, in a full service police department, you end up handling those. And lots of times in small towns that don't have law enforcement, either it might go to the constable or, the town manager, and that's not really what his job is, to be dealing with, dog complaints or neighbor disputes or those type of things. So we're looking to kind of, to incorporate those type of calls into the service that we're providing.
Well, that's helpful. Appreciate it.
Mary.
Thanks for coming tonight. So historically, I think the town's been satisfied with the state police because they're very professional and they're well-trained, and we have our local guy on the ground, our town constable. So that's worked. It doesn't work now because the state police can't give us the hours, as you've spoken to. I am curious about the training, because I think people are interested in the training that sheriffs get.
So, Vermont, there's kind of 2 pathways, right? You have, like myself, and what's called now level 3 certified officer, which is a full-time, used to call it full-time certified. We went to a full-time police academy. I happened to start in New Hampshire, that's where I went. State troopers go through the full-time academy. Everybody goes to the same training at Vermont State Police, or the Vermont Police Academy, if you're a level 3 certified officer. There's folks out there that are now called level 2, or used to be part-time. They went to a 1-week or 2-week school opposed to a 14, 16-week school. I think I went through New Hampshire's 14, Vermont's 16 weeks. So there's a little bit of a difference there. Where we're looking to really make some headway is the in-service training. As sheriff-elect, I've signed some of my guys up for trainings, one in Claremont, that happens to the national level trainers coming in and changing the way the sheriff's department approaches training. So when you talk about professionalism, again, we go back to some of these stupid things that have just been terrible that have happened across the country that have made the news, right? To me, a big part of that is your culture, your leadership culture, and then your training. How are these officers trained? What standard are they held to? So somebody coming in young that has appreciated training, it's helped me become a better police officer. My focus is spending money on in-service training to make my people better. My goal is to provide, I want people in a couple of years to say, Windsor County Sheriff's Department is the best department in the county, if not the state. So you talk about professionalism, where I'm on the same page with you. We will be one of the best trained agencies from an in-service standpoint, I think, in the state. We're a little bit different the way we're set up funding-wise, so I can kind of spend money where I see fit. We don't necessarily have and I don't want to get in the weeds with it, but there's three sources of funding for us. Myself and 2 deputies get paid base salary through the state for certain statutory requirements, transporting prisoners, civil service paperwork, those type of things. We also have a small county budget that provides some of my office staff and certain other things, and there's a $30,000 training budget there. And then we make money through contractual obligations, whether it's contracting with like a town of Hartland, or we do a highway, construction detail or a intersection detail. But so we make money from different ways. But I have a lot of leeway of how I can spend that. I don't have to go to a board of county governors or anything like that. So again, a high priority for me is training and making sure that we have good internal affairs processes in place, that we have good internal policies on how we deal with things, body cameras. I'm going to make a significant investment in body cameras, cruiser cameras. I've got a couple different quotes out there, but it's going to be upwards of $40,000 just this year to make sure that I don't want anybody working without a body camera. So those are some of the steps that I'm taking to push this thing forward into the right direction.
Thank you.
Clyde, did you have any questions?
Oh, everybody, I've heard in the past, about, oh my God, the sheriffs have come home, here we got, or Barney Fife or whatever. But the thing of it is, talking about getting tickets, it may be off subject, but usually I don't think you get a ticket unless you've screwed up.
Well,
you don't stop John Doe on the street and say, it's your day. You have won the Wheel of Fortune and you get a ticket. If you don't break the law, you don't get a ticket, right? And it's up to the citizens to cut down on police over policing. It's not. And I'm for more coverage because I know we don't get it out in the hinterlands where I live. In fact, 50 years ago, there were more state troopers out there in the woods than there are now, but it just seems like practical to get a proposal that we might be able to work with.
Andy?
I have one more, I'm sorry. About the body worn cameras and cruiser cams, do you guys currently have them?
Yeah, no body cameras right
Okay.
now. Cruiser cameras are kind of, half of them work, half of them don't.
Yeah.
But I'm just deciding which
Yeah.
brand and.
Yeah, I understand. And then how many full-time and how many part-time certified sheriffs do you currently have? I don't really know how it works because you're newly elected.
Yeah, so we, currently on the roster, I think it's like 14, and I would say it breaks down 50-50.
So about 7 full-time
Yeah. and
or
most-
level 3 and, okay.
Yeah, and the patrol at this point is probably about 50-50.
Okay.
I'm gonna have 3 patrol supervisors, they will be full-time certified level 3. And we're working, I'm not afraid to send somebody to the full-time academy, and as we go forward, that's the goal. There's also waiver processes that are in place that we can get someone up to that level through kind of like a portfolio thing almost.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Okay.
I promise.
Ryan, I know you have a select board meeting today.
Yeah, I just want to, one more thing I want to squeeze in there.
Yep.
Heartland historically is always, hey, we've got, as Clyde said, hey, we got this many state troopers that live in town. And that doesn't really equate to the amount of service you're getting. Just because they live there doesn't mean, one, that they're the one that's on call that's coming at 3 o'clock in the morning, or even that they're the ones that are being called out from, Westminster Royalton, trying to get down here. So I think this idea that you're safe because you have, I'm not saying Hartland's unsafe, but just because there's folks that live here doesn't mean that they're the ones responding, they're the ones getting called out. There's a collective bargaining agreement, certain people are on call, certain people get called out. So I know Hartland's kind of always relied on that, we get a lot of folks that live in town, but it doesn't equate to the amount of coverage or attention that you're getting. So
Okay,
I will
great.
hush my mouth.
Thank you. Good, thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
I'd like to make just a couple of quick comments. One, we in the next year, we do need to address the safety issue. So I'll be looking for the creative ways to get a committee to do a study and so on and so forth. The second comment is I hope not self-serving, but during the budget discussion with John Sanders, the fire chief, the appropriation for Agent Hartland came up. So what was that all about? Well, what's turned out is that the appropriation for Agent Hartland is to increase the community nurse program. And a subgroup of members of Agent Hartland are working with John and Mr. Beatty on, who's the kind of heads up the emergency squad. So they're noticing that EMS, a number of EMS calls are repeat calls. And so the project that we're looking at is how can we create a good communication between the EMS and the community nurse program so that when a repeat call comes up, we can actually meet the need with a community nurse rather than sending the first responder out. So kind of cool stuff happening right within our town, and again, I hope I'm not self-serving to give that little plug on that one.
That was self-serving.
There you go.
No, he's on, what are you on? Aging in Hartland.
I am on that board, full disclosure, and Rachel's the chair.
But we're also adding a social worker to the program, and so a lot of calls of service that we end up with.
Very much needed, very much needed. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Singer, are you online?
Dave heard Ryan talked about an increase in the budget there, so I think Dave Singer decided to move on rather than address that little discussion.
Okay, so we'll defer that agenda, move on to the certificate of highway mileage.
Yep, and I would like to just add before just to pivot, meant to bring this up during the AP warrants, but he was correct. We had 1 hour of Vermont State Police coverage for 5 weeks between
5 weeks?
November and December
Seems
there.
like
I
it's
think.
averaging about 1 or 2 hours
Yeah, I would say
a month.
too.
So it was, that's the low. I thought the last time was the lowest I've seen, but it was a $100 bill, so.
Yeah, looking at the expenses, it's great that we have money, but it's pretty sad that we're not able to spend it. And the state police, I have as neighbors, they're busy.
Jesus, there aren't enough of them, huh?
Yeah, very understaffed.
Why, wait, wait, understand, nobody wants to go into that?
Let's talk about that later.
Okay.
It's time to move along.
Okay.
I was saying, I need some wine here pretty soon. Get into that.
Yeah.
Well, instead, we'll talk about highway miles. How's that? Just another barn burner.
I don't think I can sign this.
Why not?
Well, it says selectmen in 2 locations
You know,
at least, and I'm not a selectman.
I can't help
either.
you.
Right? No,
This
we can't
is
sign
a,
it.
you know what? Call your state rep, because this is a state, this has nothing to do with.
I know the state
Nothing to do
statute,
with
it
I
said
know.
that the word was changed to select board.
The only thing I was capable of doing was putting that X right there. It says nothing has changed, including select men since 1897, so we'll just,
I mean, would you guys sign this if it said select women?
You can be a trustee.
Would you sign it?
Yes.
You would?
As a woman?
I would, as long as I could put my pronouns down.
Go. Okay. Anyway, I'm not signing it as a trustee. I'm not a trustee. I'm on the select
No.
board.
Dave, can you explain what this is?
We are simply
Before we-
certifying the miles in town, and the mileage has not changed from last year.
The mileage of the roads in town.
Correct. So this has not changed. You may remember when we did the blood trail there, I can't remember the exact name, but the legal trail out by Best Road
West
and
Windsor, yeah.
West Windsor.
Yeah.
There was a slight deviation in like a quarter mile less or more. We had to indicate it, we had to draw a map, we had to send it to them, all that good stuff. There has been no changes.
This is an annual thing.
This is an annual thing. Just need to certify that there has been no changes. And if some of those can overcome the ones.
I'll just cross it out.
So
Cross it out, put
say
select board.
Yes.
we cross it out.
Okay.
Or select person.
Some insecurities that one
Insecurities.
may have.
There's no insecurity here. I take umbrage with this.
You're what?
UMBRAGE, umbrage. I take offense.
Cheyenne, you getting all this?
Umbrage?
Make sure umbrage is in the minutes.
Yeah, please.
It's a great word.
I would like to make a motion that we accept and sign the certificate of highway mileage year ending February 10, 2023.
Second the motion.
Can I ask for an amendment that we sign it as select people?
Select board.
How about
According
just
to the
select board?
statute,
Select board?
it's select board.
Amendment accepted.
Okay.
They'll reject the form when it gets to the highway department.
I mean, it is a small B, right? It's really 2 words.
It'll be like June and we'll be like, whatever happened? They never sent that back. And then I'll call up and they'll be like, oh yeah, you can't cross it out.
Yes,
Dispose of it.
yes, you can, because we are the select board. We have so much power.
Well, it's funny that
Totally insecurities work there.
Not insecure, Dave.
they gender neutralized the one constitution.
Dave, you're not going to win on this one.
I'm just pointing out, I'm just pointing it out.
It's on the statute that we
Okay.
were looking at a few weeks ago.
We are on to the budget update.
Yeah, as we sign that, let's, is it Martin that we're asking to come up with?
We are on to budget update, and Martin, would you like to go ahead and
Absolutely.
present that for us?
Good evening.
Good evening, Martin.
All right. So we are doing through the end of December, 6 months through the fiscal year. So we're at 50%. I'm going to start with the revenues. If we take the actual tax money through then for 50%, our revenues collected is actually at 72% instead of 50%. So our revenues are ahead of the curve at this time. If you look on the second page, you will see grant revenues. That is new this year. David and I spoke about this at the beginning of before the year started, and we wanted to separate grant money out of our regular revenues because it's above and beyond what we normally receive as far as our budget money. So as you can see, we've had a few grants come in so far. The ARPA transfer was the first quarter of the fiscal year for the payroll. The library gets a postage grant each year, and the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation is for the library also. They get that just about every year. Any questions on the revenues?
I like the percentage, 76,966%.
The highway department, their revenues are.
Sorry, can I
yeah, sure.
apologize. The ARPA transfer is 383,000 roughly. So are there 4 transfers that happen over the course of the year? Okay, thanks.
So next month, you'll see, we transferred over an additional, so it'll be like 700, we have 800,000, right?
Yeah, another 373 for this past quarter. The highway department, revenue, as you can see, we haven't received our grant aid project money yet. The state's having issues with the computer and we should see it shortly. Expenses, again, 50% through the year. As you go through each of the departments, you can see most of the departments are within their budgets. Assessment obviously is over because we have a lot of prepays due in July as the fiscal year starts. That is slowly but surely catching up. The salaries in all the departments will slowly but surely go a little bit over because of the 3.5% raise that was done in July. So that hasn't totally started throwing the budget askew, but it's slowly pushing the wall.
And did that transfer out ARPA back in July or when we did it?
Say that again?
It's an initial bump that we gave to staff based on the ARPA monies and one of the projects that came out. Where is that here?
So it's worked into, so we haven't had to pull any or apply any money to payroll technically, well, for real.
Okay.
As of yet, although you'll see some of them are trending about 51%, 52% on certain departments. But so far we've been running fairly clean, so we haven't needed to.
No, you had an open position.
What's that?
Or you've had an open position that's gonna kind of offset some of that cost.
Yeah, but you'll see in the ordinance administration, that's him individually. So if you look at, for instance, the clerk's office, you know, you can see he stands alone. You know, mine stands alone, Martin stands alone, that open position stood alone. So, you know, I'm at 51.33 and, you know, Martin's similar. So we haven't really seen
Okay.
We'll see how that trends come month 8, 9, 10 type thing.
Thank you.
So the expenses, if we take out some of the prepays, the budget, the general fund is actually at 46%. So the general fund is holding its own fairly well, even with what we've thrown at it so far this year. Any questions on the general fund budget?
Better say paying on the 50 cents fund.
I see Mandy disagrees. The highway department, the summer side, obviously, we're using the winter labor at this point, so that's why that number hasn't moved since the last time we looked at this. Again, we take some of the prepays out of the highway department, they're at 48%. We expect them to go over budget this year. If you look at page 2.
Why do you expect them to go over?
So page 2 of 3, we budgeted $45,000 for fuel. We're at $38,000 at the end of December. I assume that's going to hit $65,000 this year. We budgeted $45,000 last year and we hit $63,000. So that's one. The paving, we budgeted $200,000. We spent $281,000. We didn't have a grant against it this year, so the highway budget, I feel will definitely go over budget. It might be a little clearer at the end of this month. So that's where I show the highway department at this point. Any questions on the highway?
Yeah, I saw, okay, so sand, what's the story of page 2 or 3 of the highway fund? What's the story, Dave, with sand? Why is that so expensive? Is that, I mean, I remember salt went up, right? But now sand is just
So one, that it depends on how much we need to manufacture each year, depending on the year prior. You know, so we pull D&D over, we basically pull it out of our pit, grind it up, And then we've also added, the last few years, you may remember the conversation on manufactured stone, adding that to the sand and giving it some actual stone mix, so that if we're just putting sand over all the hard pack that we put down during the summertime, we're basically ruining all the work that we've done in the summertime. Our sand traditionally has been fairly fine, so that gives us a real filmy, like if it rains, in with that real fine sand, it just is, it's junk. So we started adding manufactured stone, so that come spring, you don't just have that filmy sand, you've actually got stone, you know, which is what dirt road is all about. So we're essentially kind of adding that so that.
It is effective. I can kind of vouch just for like walking in the neighborhood, you sort of see that fine particle sand is washing, but the manufactured stone is actually staying in place.
I find it to be much more better for traction than just the sand itself.
And so is there less runoff too into the streams because the stone stays in place more than the sand?
I would say so. You know, it really kind of dissipates and kind of will flow with the water, whereas when the stone stays more still. Enough of it does stay on the road so that, again, you get that muddy, it's just tough to explain. It's just a film, if that's all there is. You know, we addressed it, we identified that a few years ago and kind of added that stone in just to keep that road base in check and not get that constant mud and
Yeah, thank you, that's interesting.
So
That's all I've
if it
got.
stays warm, and we keep getting rain, you guys should save some money on overtime.
Hopefully. Hopefully. Salt will be the savings if it stays warm.
And all of our main roads going home are now being sanded by the town crew, right? So that we can get home safely. So I won't lose my micro cleats in the front seat. Okay.
hopefully
Any questions?
get a little slippery out there.
No, I think.
And I'll just add that we've talked to great lengths on that paving situation, so.
Yeah. The budget at 200,000 and
The 270, it came in at 280, but we were expecting a 75,000 overage on that.
Yeah.
Spoke about that last
yeah,
spring.
and it's just, yes. After we talked about that.
Clyde, you're all set?
Appears that way.
Thank you, Martin.
Thanks for everybody.
Okay, the next item is class 4 roads, legal trails and right of way. We've talked about this a number of times. The Planning Commission has done, the Conservation Commission has done some work on this. I think we've all had some hesitations on certain things, but I guess we're here tonight to say, what's our comfort level? Can we pass it? Can we go through?
Yeah, well, I think Rob sent us an email, right? Even though, you know, some of the proposals come directly from the Conservation Commission, his suggestion is that it's good to do a public hearing so we don't end up in a similar place to where we did with the town plan, where we were told that we didn't give adequate notice of the specific changes that were coming in. And so I think that's coming from Rob, I think that's a fair thing to do. I don't think there's a rush on this.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make a motion that we.
Tim, could I ask some questions before we actually go?
Yeah, sure.
Who would hold the public hearing? Would the select board or would the Conservation Commission?
I don't think it's I haven't read anything where it's required by law that we hold a public hearing. I don't know if the select board, it's a select board policy.
Right.
We'll adopt it. I don't know if there's something that says we have to, but I think it's a good form.
Sure,
to do
sure.
it.
And I wonder, could we do it as part of the opening of a meeting?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's warned, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be a whole special meeting, and if nobody comes to provide input, then it's a
Yeah.
quick meeting.
Yeah.
Well, did the Conservation Commission hold a public hearing? I mean,
I don't believe so.
so this came from them. They did not hold a public hearing,
Right.
but they are finding fault with us for not holding a public hearing. It seems.
I think it's a suggestion. I don't think it's
odd to me.
fault. Right. I think
Well,
it's a
they were
suggestion to say,
pretty
this is a recommendation for a select board policy. It's up to the select board to set policy and adopt it.
I understand.
Before we do, we should get public input. And the criticism that came from Todd during the town plan was, great, you have a policy, but you haven't yet advertised what the significant changes are.
Sure, and in my humble opinion, we can't compare those two.
Totally different, you know, it's like, but similar, but totally different.
But we're taking what they gave us, right? Aren't we kind of rubber stamping what they gave us?
No, we've made revisions. Yeah, you know, not no, we made revisions. I think we've listened to them. I think we've been talking about this. We somehow left out the motorized vehicle piece, and that's in here now. Not the motorized vehicles, the personal motorized, yeah.
So I think there's two big changes, right? One is taking motorized vehicles, minus e-bikes off of legal trails. The other big change is requiring permits for plowing, right? Those are the two big changes. If you advertise those, if you do a hearing and nobody complains, it's done.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm just curious so we put public hearing on the agenda, how that differs from it being on the agenda and being
The
indicated
difference,
and putting out the email stating that this is on the agenda, please go to the website for further information.
It's similar.
Plus the last time this came up, you said put something out on the listserv. We did.
We did. You did
We
everything.
put things
that we
on
asked.
the website, so I guess I'm curious, you know, I really don't see the difference between, or the similarities between the planning commission and what we're doing
I think-
here.
And I don't have Rob's email in front of me, but I think the point was that if you outline the specific changes that are gonna impact people, you now give people a chance to respond versus having them look in the rearview mirror and say the select board smelled something right.
But we're gonna end up putting it, it's gonna go on the agenda the same way. It's gonna say, please see the website for this information. It's not gonna be, I'm not gonna put it out in any other kind of a way because, you know, then you're getting into.
This would be different, right? It would be saying, you know, two key changes, motorized vehicles, winter plowing permits. Yeah, voice.
Where would it say that?
I mean, in your warning. Right?
But let me just pick on that a little bit further in that, what if somebody says, well, geez, you put those two things on there, but I was really interested in that over there. You didn't put that on there, you didn't let me know.
Is there another significant restriction in these policies besides those two?
There's a,
Well, when we did the building ordinance, we didn't hold a public hearing. We had a lot of discussions and,
But I mean, that could be I don't know, that could be another example of where maybe people felt, you know, like the select board was trying to pull something.
I don't think we heard of that.
So
But
it's a
why do
suggestion.
people constantly think that we are not transparent and that we're trying to pull something over on us? The lack of faith, I don't think, if we're acting in good faith, some people's general lack of faith in us is not going to be calmed down by our attempts to make it even more transparent. There's no end in my mind.
For some people, that's true.
Yeah. And so we're acting in good faith. We can't do more than act in good
I just
faith.
believe Rob's made a valid suggestion. Right?
Have we put?
It's not gonna hurt, whoops, sorry.
Have we put this on, I don't really follow the listserv well. I can't always keep up with it. Have we put this on the listserv, I assume?
We put it out there that said, this is what's being discussed for the proposals, please visit the town website and go that
And
way.
then there was also criticism that putting it on the listserv was not enough. So, honest to God, I don't know that there's any way to satisfy.
So I mean, it's been on the agenda for 3 meetings and it was put on the listserv.
Each time it goes, every time this has been on the agenda, it's been in the email to the public that this is on the agenda, please visit the website for further information. After the first time this came up, an actual individual email went out and said, this was discussed, I understand people might be interested in it, please see the town's website, and it went out there. I would also kind of beg for consistency in that you don't just say, well, geez, you know, all of a sudden this needs to be plastered on a billboard on the listserv versus something that, you know, isn't. I think that, you know, putting it out there during a normal course of, you know, warning what you're doing and saying, look, you know, please see for further information, rather than trying to pick and choose and say, hey, what's important enough to all of a sudden plaster on the listserv? And to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure that's something we really want to get into as far as picking something out and just throwing it out there.
What might be important to Mary might not be important to me and vice versa. And then-
Listening to the conversation tonight, it could degrade pretty quickly with all the options.
Well, let me ask just a question. Is there any hands raised? Does anybody on the line have a?
From Rob. Rob's got his hands raised. Charlie, can you? Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Rob.
All right. So my suggestion would be, you guys make policies fairly rarely, right? A few a year, maybe if that. And when you have a policy that you're considering, or if you're changing an existing policy, that you write a brief description that says, this is what's different in the policy that we're considering versus what we normally do now. And then you say to the public, if you want to see that change or that description, you can go to the town website and do all of those things that you're talking about. The problem is if you just say, we're considering a policy on class 4 roads and the policy is on the town website, go look. We have already a policy on roads and culverts, and now we have a proposed class 4 roads policy. And somebody would have to go pull those two up and put them down side by side and try and figure out what's different here between these policies, where if you could just say in a couple of sentences, here's the thing that's different, right? I'm not proposing that you have to have a public meeting about this. I'm just saying, try to make it understandable so people can look and easily see what's different.
Rob, all 3 of those items are new, completely new. Period.
So then say what's different in the new policies compared to the current, what we do now.
So,
and if that's, you need a permit, then let's say you need a permit. If it's no motorized vehicles, then let's say no motorized vehicles. So people don't have to plow through 6 pages of legal jargon to try and figure out what's different.
Right, but so again, you're picking, you find no non-motorized vehicles and a permit to be new and exciting. There's other things in that document. So again, the fact that it says new policy on class 4 roads, legal trails, et cetera, it's right on the front page of the town website. It says proposed new policies. We're kind of splitting hairs here. I think that, again, out of consistency and messaging, the fact that you come up with something new, for instance, to have gone through the town plan, the amount of red marks in the town plan that was different from the year prior was astronomical. It just so happened that people gravitated towards rentals, and that became the hot button issue. But there was several sections of that town plan that one could have found interesting or fault with. So to go through and say, well, geez, the rentals is really important, here's a rental thing, I think it's, as we did, and, I would sit and talk to Todd a little bit about this. We did put out, here is the new town proposed changes. We even put out, and we didn't put it on the listserv, we said, you can go to the town website, or you can see the town clerk for the hard copy. You can have either one without the edits, or you can have one that showed the complete edits. But to go through and say, well, geez, here's chapter 9, here's the changes, here's chapter 7, here's the changes. We took a tact I think is more consistent with what we're doing here and said, please go to the town clerk's office and you can have your choice of either one.
I think you're both right. You're both right, right? Two differences. One is there were several public hearings, 3 warned public hearings for the town plan, right? There's been no warned public hearing on this.
But
there's been agenda items. Not saying it's a secret.
At least 4 times, if not 3.
Yeah, absolutely. In this case, Rob's suggestion is easier for the community to, read, understand, and react to. Just a path that's a little bit easier for folks. So we can ease their way, or we can just vote on it now and call it a done deal.
So then if you miss something one time, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate for a second, but if you miss something or he doesn't put something in there, then there's gonna be the perception that we're trying to sneak something past, whereas this is very consistent, right? I mean, you're saying.
I get it. Both ways work. Both ways work. But if you're gonna restrict, people probably use motorized vehicles on these trails today. We're gonna restrict them. Shouldn't that be called out? People live on class 4 roads today, they plow, or they have somebody come and plow. We're gonna require permits now. It's a change for their lives. Shouldn't we call that out? It seems reasonable for significant changes to call it out and say, just in case you weren't paying attention the first 3 times, here's what we're really doing.
I get it. I get what you're saying, and I think you're right. I also think that people say, why didn't you send me a letter? I live on a class 4 road. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So
how much
babysitting do we have to do? I don't know. And like you're saying, setting precedent, if that's a dangerous thing to do. I don't know the answer to this. Well, I do know the answer. We'll be criticized either way. So,
There is one other component, and I don't know if I think it's right or wrong or indifferent. The power of permitting was, as I highlighted in the 2014 town report, was a select board authority, right? So that is an authority that you will turn over to the town manager.
Can I just point something out?
Yeah, sure.
It's already been turned over per statute. It's already road maintenance is the responsibility of the town manager. That's all I'm gonna say.
Specifically the permitting.
The road maintenance.
I know you've published the statute 100 times.
I'm just gonna say, look at the powers that you do have. And it does not talk about road, this falls within jurisdiction of the town manager.
Okay.
You're not giving over anything that you statutorily was voted on by the voters back in the 1950s.
And is that, was that part of the statute that you provided to us previously? In previous meeting you had the statute outlined. Was that section part of that statute?
Correct. The town manager statutes spells it out. So those responsibilities of the select board that are not outlined as what you keep have been delegated to the town manager.
I think I'm in agreement with Mary, Mandy, and Jim, you nodding your head the same way. I think we can create a document that, is blue and red and pink and shows every sort of change. And we're not going to satisfy everyone.
Should we try to satisfy a few people though by pointing out the motorized vehicle thing and the other change?
Well, what I was wondering, I kind of feel like we've been spinning our wheels on this for a number of meetings. Yes, I want to get it right. Do we somehow put it on the agenda one more time and with
feeling?
No, we changed the font, and we'll do the Steve Jobs thing and make it a prettier font. And when we put out the agenda publicly, we say, if you want to know what's in here, repeat what we've said how many times now. Go to the town website and you'll have to compare. I think it is a slippery slope to try to get a document that shows the changes.
And I'm not suggesting something, and I don't know what Rod can speak for himself, but I think it's a couple of line items, like line 1, policy on permits for winter maintenance, class 4 roads. Line 2, restricting motor vehicle access on legal trails. I didn't personally see anything dramatic in there.
Well, we could just say these are the highlights. This is not inclusive of all the changes. Have a disclaimer like that.
Is it, I have another just thought, but I'm not, listserv savvy. Is it possible to actually submit this to go on the list?
Well, no, you just put a link to
I know, but, that
Yes,
takes
you
an
could.
extra step.
You could have them closer.
So if you have.
At the size, there's some size.
You can't do it,
size
okay,
thing.
okay.
But again, I kind of, we are in the midst of this intersection piece where people have been sort of saying we're not giving right information or they're doing this. So I want to be real careful. And the discussion on the town plan, that put me to sleep on the couch many nights trying to sort of read through that thing and trying to switch between this plan and that plan, trying to figure out what was up. So I do like the suggestion that maybe we summarize, maybe we ask Rob to give us the 3 or 4 points that they feel are eye catchers. And I don't know, how do we?
I think that's a slippery slope. I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Because you think then that's.
If you're doing it for one, you really have to do it for everyone,
So could the
in my
Conservation,
opinion.
could the Conservation Commission take that step?
I don't think they should. I think that's also a slippery slope.
Yeah, because they've given it to us now,
To us.
much like the town plan.
I don't think they should individually either. I think that to try and put something out that simply highlights a couple of things. You got a town website, direct them to the town website, say, look,
Which is our.
this is where, go to look. We did it with the town plan. Town plan by statute requires a public hearing. Simple policy does not.
Well, we're on record right now, and this, it's being recorded.
I was just thinking about that. I mean, we didn't record it 2 or 3 times before.
We didn't?
We
We
did,
did, yeah.
we did.
Yeah.
We kind of, Rob was here, we had back and forth, we had some revisions. I was on the agenda of the last meeting, if I recall.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, do we kind of just not approve it and sort of say one more time if you pay attention to the agenda and what we discuss in these meetings?
Is one more time gonna be enough?
No, I can't guarantee that.
I don't mind some input on this at this point, based upon what you've got and what you see. Any feedback on whatever changes were made?
Could I speak again?
Love to hear you.
So if you're going to just put out what you have already put out the last 3 times, there is no point. There's no advantage to doing that. The only reason to put it back on the agenda for a future meeting is if you're going to do something different, which would be to explain what the changes are. If you're not if you're not willing to do that, that's fine. That's your decision. I wouldn't bother then to go through another iteration of the same old thing.
We need Herb Ogden's, I forget the name of that paper that he put out in town.
Oh,
news.
the Hartland News
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
Well, we've explained tonight what they are, what the differences are, haven't we? Haven't we just? spent
You've
half
explained to
an hour?
who though? Who's listening?
I don't know. You are.
We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, we got
16? 16?
16 people on there. It's kind of high for one of our meetings. Well, you laugh. So we had, 35 show up for town planning public hearing? Seriously, Rob.
Okay, Jim, I can't see putting this off in Durant. I don't see a vehicle that would magically solve what is an issue. I think we all recognize there's an issue here.
You got a hand up from Stacy, if you want it.
Okay. Well, Stacy, please.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes.
So this is Stacy Bradley. Yeah, just to kind of make a point, I mean, there are a lot of people who don't pay attention, unfortunately, to town business. I'm often sort of surprised, but it's kind of a fact. It's always been an issue and a problem of how do you get people's attention and draw their attention to issues you think that might be a real concern that have potential impact on their lives. And I think you just do the best you can, being very consistent with the information, making it as available as you can without making it impossible for yourselves. And that's all you can do. You're never going to capture everybody. That's just a fact. And, that's unfortunate. And that's, I guess, what I have to say on that.
Okay, any other comments out there? I guess I would entertain a motion to accept the document as.
There'll be 3 documents.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can we do it in one fell swoop?
Has a hand up.
Okay.
Someone has a hand raised.
Yep.
Good evening, Gary Tratcher here.
Hi, Gary.
Hi. We are one of the landowners who will be affected by the legal trail policy. And I would love to see a current copy of both of the policies that the select board is considering in its current form, to be able to read it through thoroughly and to be able to submit comments. Both as a landowner and one who is quite values the legal trails and class 4 roads here in town. And that the select board, well, and I appreciate hearing the select board members discuss this while the town manager does the bidding of the select board. Thank you.
So how
Can
long is it?
can I get fucking pissed off when put out there?
No, don't.
Okay.
So
Um,
how long's it been on
Gary,
how long's it been on there?
It's been on there at least 2 months.
Yeah.
And the most up to date are all up there.
You gotta address it. Can you please
Yeah,
mark?
Gary, that was going to be my comment, that the changes are up on the website. So I'm sorry if you didn't catch them. I know you came here to testify. I'll just leave it at that.
They've been on there, Gary, for 2 months, so you'll have ample time and opportunity to read them.
Front page of the website.
Okay. How do we put a motion together? Can we do it in one fell swoop, or do we?
Yeah, can we do,
You need to do them individually.
do we need to do them individually, Dave?
Okay.
It's up to you guys. You can do them individually, or you can just.
Okay, I
go
do
through
have
them.
comments on them.
It is highlighted on the website too. The changes are highlighted on the website too.
There are some comments I want to make after the motion's made. They have to do with rights of way, again, being hyphenated, spelling out Vermont, because this is not a postal document, so it's not VT. And that's it. It's easy, Dave. There was a couple of apostrophes that need to be addressed, okay?
Can do.
Okay, Mary, would you grab those three and make a motion that will include those three documents that
Okay.
has in front of them, or?
Okay. So I would like to make a motion that we pass or accept, or what's the word in here? We approve the policy on legal trails. The policy on legal trails as dated January 4th, 2023.
Correct.
Okay, and then, let's see. Where's the other one? Oh, you know what, I don't have them on here, it's on the last one.
Right there.
But if we can do them individually, I'm gonna vote different on different ones.
Okay, do you want a second? Anybody second that one then?
Which one did you do?
I only did
Legal
one, he
trails.
wants to do them individually. So, I did legal trails.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Any discussion?
Yes, and it would be right of way, should be hyphenated. VT should be spelled out. Font, I don't know if dog owners should be hyphenated, that was the first time I've ever seen that. And the font should be consistent throughout, but I think it was done that way purposely to highlight a big change. And that's one of my only comments.
Yeah, you need to give me that back.
Yeah.
But I'll convey, I'll touch base with Cheyenne.
Yep, okay.
Okay, there is a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Abstain.
You're abstaining?
Okay. The next one, ask for a motion to,
I'll do it.
okay,
I'll make a motion to accept the right-of-way permit policy dated 10/3/22 as written.
Right of way. I think we're missing a policy in here.
The other ones were in our previous packet, right?
I went to the website to pull it up.
Oh, you went to the website?
Correct.
I want to see
So-
what people are seeing, you know?
Yes,
Wanna
they
see?
were in your previous packets. So the legal trails is the only one that went out because they have the new
Right.
non-motorized, or the new e-bike language in there,
Right.
and a couple other changes.
You warned us, you told us to bring that to hand. Okay, can you reread your motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to accept the right-of-way permit policy dated 10/3/22 as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against.
Against? Okay. Motion passes. And the third one,
That is the policy on class 4 roads. Does anybody else want to make this motion? I don't want to be greedy.
Just a minute.
All right, I'll make the motion.
no,
Oh, glad you're going to do it. All
I'll do
right,
it, save you.
thank you.
I'll move that we adopt the class 4 road policy dated 9/19/22 for the town of Hartland.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Same thing, spell out VT, same thing, right of way needs to be hyphenated. And there's a couple other little tinier things, but I'll tell Dave about them. One is remove an apostrophe, another one lowercase t, that's it.
Driveway needs to be hyphenated?
No, right of way,
Oh, right of way.
no.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Rob, thank you for your input. I think your observation that there was no easy way to really make sure everyone knew what was going on. Thank you, anyway. Let's move on to manager's update.
Just want to remind everybody that we do need to have that meeting on Monday, January 23rd at 5:30. I believe everybody can make it. Okay. To go over the articles, the warning, we may have another item or two, but that's the main one, is the town meeting warning.
Is there, besides appropriations, are there any other key articles that we should be aware of at this point?
You were gonna have, so, there is one for John Sanders, he mentioned it during budget season about, basically changing the fund. Right now is, can only withdraw with approval of the voters. I think that, you know, an argument can be made that that was very difficult. That, for instance, this year they ran into difficulty with their trucks in being able to access that with select board approval instead of going to the voters itself. So that is one that you see. Also have one on.
So it's the highway equipment fund?
There's a fire truck.
Reserve account.
I'm sorry, I meant to say fire department equipment fund.
Yep, for the fire trucks.
Okay.
Transferring 100 grand to the culvert fund, transferring 34,000, I think it was, to the bridge fund. The budget, articles.
Yeah. So we haven't seen it, but the planning commission is suggesting that the $19,000 that was budgeted is not gonna be enough?
We haven't seen it.
No.
I can't act on that.
I mean, it's,
we
if you
expected
look at
it.
their minutes, you know.
I'm sorry?
I mean, if you their minutes probably reflect it at this point, but.
I'll say this publicly. I don't trust their minutes. I attended a number of meetings and the minutes don't seem to necessarily correspond. The minutes seem to correspond to what they would like as opposed to what the actual planning commission talks about. And that upsets me. So I can't pay that any credence that they're, we expected them to come and we adjusted their amount. They never made an official request to us. So, forgive me, but that's, I can't, I don't know the way out of it. I would hope that they would start having minutes that actually reflect what the meetings say.
And that would be a big start. Okay.
Just to add, before I ended up with a bloody nose that evening, I was under the impression they were gonna come to the next select board meeting and have that discussion.
They were supposed to send, I think.
And some people were here, but they never voted up. Dan was here.
So is the deadline come for petition articles to go on the warning, or is that?
That's kind of one reason we put the meeting off until Monday.
Yeah.
Thursday, I believe the 19th is the day for petitions to be in.
Yeah.
We're still waiting for, I think, 2.
Yeah.
I do have, to kind of start this off, we did get one I've got it in here, I thought we might get one. We did get one RFQ, or a request, response to our RFQ for architectural services for the rec center and for Damon Hall. So I wanted to just kind of pass this along. This will come up again, but just wanted to kind of, as part of the update, we did get the one, this is the gentleman that has submitted it. We did have, there is a local person that works for Black River Design, thought that they were particularly interested in this project. Like most of the other architectural firms, you know, just prior to, or kind of leading up to the holidays, they found out that they got a rather large project. I think it was in Fairfax. So they didn't think that they could give the attention that deserved to this project. So they got pulled away. Breadwell was also interested. They kind of ran into the same issues. So these guys are busy, but this person was interested in working on this project, and I'll work with Isaac and moving forward on this, and we'll have more, hoping for Monday's meeting, but just know that that has transpired. Jim, you mentioned Green Mountain Power and that agreement. I'll be sending that out. Just wanted to make sure that everybody understood what was happening there. It will be signed. The check will go along with it, just to essentially to keep our place and to have that and to allow them to move forward with certain things. And lastly, I haven't done this a while, but just as kind of a refresher, it's always on here, and you know, I think everybody just kind of glosses it through, but things that I'm working on and will be working on or looking at things in the future. Obviously, we've been talking about the budget in the town report is front and center. Three Corners intersection is certainly front and center. ARPA-related projects, I just mentioned the RFQ responses as far as these two buildings go. Looking to move forward also on the RFP on Jennyville Road culvert and Queechee Road. Once I get beyond these two things, we'll pick up Queechee Road and try and move that forward. Energy audits, working with somebody that Sarah Bruce had identified, have sent him the needed information that he needed. Hopefully we get a response from him soon. If not, I'll touch base with him to try and move that forward. These energy auditors tend to be a certain breed and kind of difficult to hone in. They like the work that comes after the audit. You know, they like to do the audit and then say.
So what's an energy audit? How much energy, like the buildings are using?
Where your energy loss is, your heat loss or energy loss is from. We've done several of these. What we run into is they kind of want to point out the work that needs to be done, and then the same person wants to then do that job. And if they're not going to get that job right away, we tend to lose them, or they just, it's just an interesting.
Dave, is this
dynamic.
for multiple buildings or just one?
Two, so we've done most of the buildings, town-owned buildings. We were looking at the activity center. on Brownsville Road and the North Hartland School. We'll see where that goes. I'm hopeful that he will stay focused.
So stupid question, if the North Hartland School is vacant.
Yep.
Can't we just turn down the heat?
We have.
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Is there value in doing an energy audit on that building?
So much like I've done an engineering audit, the reason for doing the energy audits on these is if, so for instance, if we are doing rec center or Damon Hall, if we can incorporate those energy changes into the scope, we will. Right now, the scope is pretty specific to the ADA access and the drainage, but if we're digging up a wall and for whatever reason or however we can strengthen it from an energy perspective, we'll do that. We'll take the information that we've garnered out of that. So for instance, when we put the RFQ out, the engineering audit and the energy audits went to these folks just to give them a perspective of what's going on with these buildings. So there's a value that knowing that, perhaps if there's going to be work done in the next 5-8 years that, knowing what needs to be done, if we can incorporate that, then we'll take that step. Kind of just putting the pieces into place as to knowing our buildings, knowing what needs to be done to them. And I think I put this in a past town manager update that, when I had this guy come visit, that he thought that there was potential with that building. I think Clyde asked why we're spending $5,000 on that building. My response was that it's a pretty decent building. It's in pretty good shape. We did walk into the town garage and spent all of about 38 seconds before we determined that building, best to just put money elsewhere. There's really not a whole lot you're going to do to make that building energy efficient until you build a new one. So, and beyond that, we got Gilson Road, and we still got the roof to the daycares, the activity center as well. So.
Well, I was wondering, because you think we glossed over that, but you left off.
I know, I saw that.
A few words there. And so.
I must have tinkered with the margins at the very end or something. I don't know what I did.
Move southward from my house.
I think it said something about roof to, I didn't know whether it should be a person or a thing or a man, women. I wasn't exactly sure how to. Maybe I just left it off to be safe.
You have a page too. We don't have a blank.
Oh, it is on the back. How about that?
Oh, okay. Let's see what it says. A roof to the activity center are concerned. The HVAC to the library and the North Hartland School remain. Thank you.
Okay.
I was making that up.
Any questions for Dave?
Nope.
Future agenda items would be the town meeting and the warning. We have to also talk about our meeting before the town meeting. We've got to clarify that date.
Can I throw out one other suggestion? Can we officially move our March 6th meeting to the previous Monday in case we need that time to prep for town meeting? We can't do it that night. They're gonna, they'll need upstairs and downstairs to be set up.
February 27th.
Yeah. I mean, if we end up not needing the meeting, we can cancel. Right? So I'll make a motion that we officially move our March 6th select board meeting to February 27th. Is that right?
That would be the date.
February 27th.
It could be burdensome for the select woman over here. One extra meeting.
Yeah, believe me.
Why are we singling out select women? Isn't it a select person?
Can I have a second for that, please?
Select board member. I will select.
You should. We can put that.
All in favor, Dave? I'm ignoring you right now.
We'll want to put that on the agenda so we can make them take action on that.
Not to schedule a meeting. Right.
Because it's a future agenda item, and now you're taking action on a future agenda item.
Yeah, but when we schedule meetings outside of select board meetings, you schedule the meeting for next week.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't think we have an issue
That doesn't
there.
have to be warned.
Don't even make a motion. I think my issue is more with the motion and
So
action.
don't,
and-
so don't make a motion.
Don't
to
make a
schedule it.
motion because you're making a motion on something that's
I
a
withdraw
future
the
agenda
motion
item.
and suggest that we schedule our March 6th meeting on February 27th.
February 27th. So noted.
So noted.
Can
Good
I
idea.
ask for?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, we're done. Be safe. I have no idea what the roads are like out there. Anyone check?
So, we gotta go regardless, right? So.
It's true.
You've almost been required